Hello everyone, welcome back to California Music Innovation Summit 2021. This is the first panel of the day. We'll discuss about music intelligence. The goal of this panel is to discuss the role and use of data as a source of intelligence, from tracking to insights. To host it, my friend Yvan Boudillet, CEO at The Link, and the panelists are Julien Lefebvre, Head of Architecture and Innovation at SACEM, Marcus Fitzgerald, CEO at GigMeet, Christian Lioma, Chief Strategy Officer at Utopia Music, Ash Riaz, Head of Product at Aldu, and finally, Robin Define, Customer Experience Director at Believe. Guys, thank you very much for being with us, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Jerome. Welcome everyone. What a stellar panel we got here. I'm really glad to introduce this day after Paul's keynote with this gorgeous panel. And 40 minutes will be tight to explore everything we have to explore together, but let's go for it. I will first ask you guys to introduce yourself to the audience, your company, your role, and then we will dive into the secrets of data and analytics a little bit further. Where to start? Let's say my friend Marcus, GigMeet, you first in line. Please, welcome.
Well, thanks Ivan for having me, and thanks for this fantastic panel. My name is Marcus Fitzgerald. I'm the founder and CEO of GigMeet. GigMeet is Europe's largest online platform to book artists for live or virtual events, with over 150,000 users that we have right now. And most recently, and that's probably also the reason for me to be on this panel, we started to collect and show fan and streaming data around the artists to show the potential of an artist to sell tickets or draw a crowd even locally. So yeah, that is what we are doing and we are working on.
Great. Yes, we're going to talk, not only about streaming, obviously, but also live performance. Rob, I believe, welcome, Rob. Tell us about your role, but also maybe a little bit of your journey and background before joining Believe, so everyone understand where you sit. And
yeah, sure. Thanks, Ivan. Great to be here. Thank you again. So my name is Rob Define. I am the Customer Experience Director at Believe, and I'm responsible for product, data, and design. My background is not music. I spent 15 odd years in the travel industry, really developing product strategy for international businesses such as Expedia in Europe. So very heavily product focused and looking at how to deliver the best experience for customers in travel industry. Taking that to music now, I'm really excited to be at Believe. I joined Believe last year, almost a full year. I joined on the 17th of July, so getting to my 1-year anniversary. And Believe is really one of the world's leading digital music companies, as you know, and our focus is really on independent musicians and independent labels. We really approach the music landscape from a digital perspective. By 2030, 90% of the music revenues will be digital, and that's really where Believe excels. So again, fantastic to be in this new industry, still learning a few things about how it works, but excited to be here today to discuss data.
Great, and you bring fresh eyes to the ecosystem. And happy birthday, happy IPO, by the way. And Julien at SACEM in France. I'm in Belgium this time, Julien.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Next time, maybe we'll be in Belgium.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Julien. I'm head of IT architecture and innovation at SACEM. So SACEM is a collective management organization of France. And of course, we process a lot of data every day.
Yes, and you will tell us not a little bit more, but a lot more about how you make it work and with what purpose and what challenges ahead. But also, yes, the approach of SACEM is also really interesting to this conversation, and we are glad to have you. Christian, your time. you're in Switzerland right now. Where are you now?
I am in Switzerland right now.
Cool.
Unfortunately, not in Belgium, but hopefully someday we will meet face to face. Happy to meet you guys. My name is Christian Loma. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Utopia Music. We're one of the fastest growing tech and data platforms in music industry that is located now in Switzerland, UK, Sweden, and Finland. And really our purpose is to create a fair pay for every play by having understanding on the data gap within music. So we've been building for years and years technologies that are able to aggregate and analyze and capture consumption from various of channels, including the various broadcasting channels, radio and TV as the first focus. And then we've been creating a lot of intelligence for understanding and analyzing the value of the music so that it can be used for several different use cases. I also come from non-music background, so I have been spending with the company and in the industry for 6 months now, but 20 years in tech, doing all sorts of product development, innovation, and strategy-related work within telecommunications as well as in financial industry. And it's kind of funny to see actually how well the sort of experiences from finance industry as well as telecommunications relate to the state where we are in music today, and how applying those practices in data management and processes can help create a better world for music with fair pay for every play.
Really interesting, because I think this is something we will discuss a little bit about the skill set and education needed in making a meaning out of this load of data out there. Ash, last but not least, welcome, and tell us about Aldu and maybe your journey leading to Aldu, where you are bringing to the world now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, firstly, thank you for inviting us, to be part of this. It's great to be part of the conversation. Hello to everyone watching. My name's Hash Riaz. I'm head of product at Aldu. We're a young, technology company based in London, UK. We've built a smart meter, as audio meter, should I say, that sits in commercial venues. And the aim of this is, to track the actual music that's being played in public performance locations. And, we do this, in the way to streamline and digitize current processes to get the rights holders and artists fairly compensated for what they do. And I have been in this industry a little bit, so I'm a music tech head through and through. Fortunately, and my previous role was at the innovation arm at Abbey Road Studios, worked a lot with startups, and really excited to be on this journey, as Christian said, to bring, fair pay to all those involved, and harnessing some of the latest technologies which are around, to try and do this. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks, everyone. Let's jump in the fire now. What I propose as a journey in this conversation, I think also to make it more, insightful for the audience, I propose you to go by type of usage first, because we can talk about different approach of data tracking and data mining by publishing, recording, and live. But let's go for usage-based approach. Let's start with streaming. I guess this is the most fastest growing, maybe not, but this is the one everyone discuss. So let's maybe start with Rob and then Julien. Can you tell us the approach of Believe when it comes to data, analytics and dashboarding? When we're talking about streaming, meaning your methodologies, the kind of tools you bring to the table for who, maybe, and maybe some kind of challenging you're facing right now that maybe technology can help to improve in the near future. But so let's start with streaming, Rob. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So streaming, when you look at the analytical landscape of the music industry today, most products for customers kind of look like Google Analytics, right? And don't get me wrong, Google Analytics is a great product, but it's not necessarily for musicians or independent labels. So since I joined Believe last year, we spent a lot of time talking to our artists and talking to our labels to really understand kind of their pain points and kind of what they're looking for on the analytics side. And whilst, of course, there are a lot of different needs coming from these conversations, there's one clear trend that really comes out of these conversations, and it's that the customers are really struggling to take action based on the data that they're getting out of the streaming data. So, what are we doing about it? We're starting to think about how we shift the way we present this data, moving away from what we call today cold data. So just giving them the numbers, your performance, you've driven this many streams today, and that type of information, to really give customers more insight and action-led recommendations or warm data, so that they can take that data and they can say, okay, based on this data, we'd like to increase our marketing, or based on this data, we should be touring in these cities, and really representing that in a way where they can advance their careers without having to be a data scientist or a data analyst.
Super interesting. So, yeah, you're trying to bring really insights and decision, let's say, making, enabling that decision making from the artist perspective. But what do you bring on top of, like, for instance, Spotify for artists, YouTube for artists? Every platform nowadays are offering those kind of insights tool for artists. So, is it only the aggregation that you bring on top, or something else?
So it's a good question. I think, one of the things that we bring is, if you look at Spotify for artists and then YouTube for artists, for example, it is a great example, because you have on one side audio and on another side video. And what we see is that today, a lot of companies are looking, or a lot of artists and a lot of analytics tools are looking at that data in isolation. So either audio or video. And we, on the other side, have started to think about how do you cross that data and get extra value by aggregating that data together. So last year, we ran a study with a company to look at kind of what was the impact on audio streams when you release a video. And we saw some really interesting results. We saw that when you release a video on YouTube, there's an uplift of about 30% in audio streams on other platforms. And this is amazing data, right? A halo effect, a lot bigger than we thought it would be. And so whilst this was a highly targeted study on 20 to 30 artists, we're looking now to industrialize that data model in order to cross that data and add that extra insight to our artists, show them, there is a lot of value in creating videos. It'll have a huge impact on your audio streaming performance. And then, we're also starting to look at how do you mix that in with UGC data and kind of trending. So again, the Spotify for artists, the YouTube analytics, these platforms are great, but they're looking at data in isolation. And once you start mixing data from various different sources, you can really then untap the value.
Yeah, super interesting. How to manage connecting the dots, right? Exactly. Julien, a question for you, because from insights at Believe to maybe a bigger focus on your side about collecting rights, right? Can you tell us about the approach and of SACEM, let's say behind the scene? How does it work? Like, because maybe some people don't get how big of a work it is to process all the data you are processing every day. Tell us the story about. Yeah,
it's for us. It started as a problem more than an opportunity. I would say we had to process mountains of data to get our members paid. So, but when I joined in 2016, we were starting a new platform, and now it's up and running for years. So it's let's say day-to-day job to process all those data, and it's working very fine. And we are now adding more and more kind of usages, such as SVOD. And now we have built all the infrastructures and tools to process the data. We are getting to the more interesting part to get extra value of those data. And as Rob just said, we have the chance at SACEM, we are not focused on only one channel or one DSP. We have the data from streaming, from UGC, from TV, radio, live. And so we have a lot of opportunities and in front of us to bring value to our artists. The difficulty maybe for us is we have a wide range of members, from the small creator. So the dashboard need to be quite simple and straightforward, to the very big publisher who wants a very advanced dashboard with a market share, maps of the world, and the different offers of the DSP, and so on, and the evolution over time. So it's a very big topic for us, but it's progressing a lot in the last 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Julien, and we will come back to that later. It will be the next question: adoption, because it's good to have like big dashboard, but how does it make them adopted by the users, creators at the end of the day? Coming to you, Christian, because I think this is important also to. Julien mentioned radio broadcasting, and you also mentioned that you processing those data at Utopia. Can you tell a little bit more about the methodology here and how big it is? Because sometimes we are taking so many times talking about streaming, you are maybe losing the point that radio is still huge.
It is still massive, and radio is one of the biggest channels for breaking new acts still to date. That's one of the ways we discover music, and the royalties flows are relatively significant still in many parts of the world. So that is one of the reasons why, in addition to having access to other digital streams of music, we've been doubling down on capturing true and full value of the radio stations. So we've been creating an infrastructure for years now, which is utilizing obviously proprietary audio wave fingerprinting, but also capturing data from other assets. And through that, we were able to unify what we believe to be the most expansive set of data when it comes to radio and other broadcasting media. And that is then being repurposed to analysis with our customers. So some customers, like investors, might be interested in seeing what is the future consumption of a specific catalog or an asset in certain regions. And that really unlocks the power, like my colleagues already mentioned. By combining the different assets together, you're able to see where to target your marketing efforts. You're able to see where you might be able to claim royalties. And especially for somebody who is investing or seeking to grow their music audience, that's crucial thing. So we don't believe that radio is gone. Obviously, it's in decline, but it's still extremely valuable for creators.
Yeah, and if combined with other sources and channels, really then it makes sense, value, and helps the decision making from artist perspective, but also investors. I think it's interesting you brought that to the conversation, because we've seen the tremendous amount now of investment in rights, and we need to monitor that in a way. So I think this is a good transition to our friends Marcus and Ash, talking about also combining sources together. Maybe GigMeet, you at GigMeet first, Marcus. What kind of views you make of streaming data for the live sector in this way? Then we will focus on live performance data. But you see my question, like how far do you see the live sector adopting? I know that we are living a terrible period for live sector, so no question about that. But how do you see the live sector evolving in considering extra data out of the live sector, ticketing and search? And what do you bring to the table at GigMeet in this direction?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, looking at the live sector, and it's probably one of the like indicators of the live sector is that you have usually a kind of a late adoption to new technology. So what I can say is that a lot of data that's been looked at so far has always been ticket sales, and there's studies around that show that there's a lot of tickets unsold, and that means basically that just looking at ticket sales and trusting your gut feeling is not helping you to increase the attendance of concerts and the success for both sides, for the artist side as well as the promoter side. And of course, streaming and social media data, both of those more like, let's say, more accurate on a daily basis sources become more and more looked at or interesting. The big problem and the big challenge here is the accessibility of this data for all stakeholders who are involved in organizing a concert, or decision makers when it comes to selecting who is playing. And there's a fun story. There was an article before Corona, obviously, like an interview with one of the CEOs of one of the major German festivals, who said, "Oh, to book my headliners, I asked the manager to get a screenshot from the Spotify for Artists dashboard of those acts in order to make a data-driven decision." And I have to say, being in touch with a lot of bookers, managers, agents, and so on, I have to say this is already slightly advanced in the industry, an advanced approach, although it might sound funny to ask for a screenshot. But that shows already how difficult it is to access this data. So now what we do at Gigmit is to working on making it accessible for all the sites. So gathering the data, like fan data and streaming data from artists with the approval of an artist, but distributing it and showing it to the other side, to the promoter, in order to make a better and more informed decision on which venue size would be the right one, and so on and so forth. And obviously, it is very important to look at this data, because if you just look at ticket sales of what happened, what an artist did sell, let's say 3 years ago, there might be a huge change in relationship with fans, listenership of the artist over the time. So you can't really count on that information. It's already outdated, and especially the times we are living is everything is faster. Artists develop faster. Listeners switch faster to other artists and decide on where they want to go when it comes to a concert. So this is all, it's important to look at, but we are still early stage. And I also have to say that Corona didn't help on that, because we couldn't test any sort of live events and experiences in relation to the data around the artist in the whole last year. So we kind of have to start over again now and get our learnings from it, and of course work on an even more accessibility of data in that field.
And now you will have to also take into account live streaming, guys, because it will be part of the landscape, obviously. And thanks for sharing that experience, Marcus, because I think it brings me to Ash, and to because what you're bringing to the table with Odoo, and I will let you explain that in more depth. If the live sector is not considering yet something else than ticketing, are they ready for the next phase, which will be maybe through Odoo to assess and understand what is being played in each venue, thanks to the kind of technology you bring to the table? But tell us first how Odoo is playing a role in capturing live performance data, and how does it work? Maybe in tech also, tell us about the product itself. I think it's interesting from a tech perspective. How does it work?
Yeah, no, sure. I can clarify all of that. So the audio meter itself, it uses music recognition technology. So, we're doing the opposite to what a smart speaker might do, and focusing on the voice and use language processing and try and understand what's going on. We're trying to identify whether musical content is actually being identified or is present. And then we're using, signal processing, a lot of other cool stuff, and music recognition technology to kind of identify what's actually being played at the point in time. We get that data to our back end in almost real time. We can see it with beautiful, fancy visualizations, and you're able to sort and sift through this data, which makes it much more digestible. And what I didn't mention in the intro is, from that, what we're able to do is generate reports in the language of the industry, whether it's APIs, DDEX, and we can generate usage reports, and we can pass that on to our PRO and CMO partners. Sorry for the acronyms, but performing rights organizations, collective management organizations. So we have an actual clear view of what's being consumed in these venues, so we can make sure that the royalties are rightly allocated and distributed. But in that process, so that's kind of that's the core. That's what we're trying to do. Because streaming gets a lot of the glitz and the glamour, and we understand it contributes a lot of money, and it's had a huge impact on the whole landscape, but when we're talking about broadcast, when we're talking about radio, when we're talking about streaming, all of these kind of sources are consumed in commercial spaces, in venues, in gyms, in cafes, in restaurants, in bars, in nightclubs. And I think, to understand what's happening on that scale by geographical location in different territories, even by town, I think that's a very powerful indicator and signals, when we're talking about aggregating data and how that can help to inform business or operational decisions. We believe that this data needs to be in existence, and that's what we're trying to bring to the table. And, we know from the consumer, we know on the consumer level, right? We can get that data. You can start to see demographics, audience. You can do all that audience building, but it's also interesting to know, what sectors are listening to your music, right? What actual venues, what brands are consuming your music, and that, coming from the industry background, that information can be very powerful. And not only can this data be useful for royalty distribution, but like I said, all of this extra data in the hands of the creators themselves, can be really powerful, and that's what we're about.
Yeah, in the hands of creators, I think this is the next topic for us, adoption. And thanks for all of your insights so far. I think there is also a topic we will not tap in today. We only scratch the surface. It's also the values that it can generate on top of. This is not the topic of the day, but it's also maybe more revenue for the creators and for the whole industry when you are able to process more data with more accuracy. But let's take it for next year, that one, the bigger cake to be shared. Julien, about adoption, because I think it's a good transition from what maybe Christian and let's say Utopia and Udo are doing to SACEM, because they bring like brilliant technology to the table, to the industry, to the ecosystem, but then internally as an organization, how do you make it work in terms of methodology, education, training, and how do you see your creators react to all of those new tools and insights you can provide to them? I think that it's part of the process, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's very different. I would say depending on the usage channel. For online, we were born with data, so we built everything around data. So we have a very good advanced tools to process and provide insight about the data. And also, I think it's very important for everyone to understand that in the online, you have to process the data to invoice the DSP. So for us, we can't get wrong. If we don't process the data correctly, we won't invoice the DSP and we won't pay our members. So it's very different from TV or radio, where we get the money and then process the data to pay the members. Very different approach. So, and also the systems around TV and radio were built before, but we still get a lot of data. And that's very interesting because we see also a lot of modernization, as Christian and Ash said. So for let's say public performance in shops and so on. So we have new technologies such as the one with Odoo, and can announce we are starting a collaboration with Odoo to test to test their audiometer and see the usage. And I think something we weren't able to do in the past. Of course, we are not able to monitor what is played in every shop in France. It was just impossible. When we see new technologies coming, such as Odoo, it starts to becoming something we can envision for the future. So and it will bring more and more data and allow us to get even more precise in our distribution to our members. So I think even in the channels we could consider as legacy, there is still a lot of evolution in the technology and in the way we can process data and bring value to our members. Then to come back to your question, we have different kind of members. So we just made huge evolution on the dashboard we provide for the distribution. And since we collect and distribute on all channels, it's very insightful for our members. When they go and check their distribution, they can see their streams, if they were played in TV, radio, cinema, in which movie, in which country, And so they have a lot of data. And what we need to do now is learn about the adoption of this data, because we provide the tool, but it's true that we still are not monitoring very precisely how they are used. And that's also the role of innovation, to determine what we could bring more, the new features we could bring to our members to help them. Always with the consideration that all this data is not public and we cannot share everything with everyone. So it's also a big topic.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that. I think because this is maybe something we can just call a service to bring to the creators. And talking about that, I think Believe is a pretty good example of artist services led company. And it brings me to a question to you, Rob. Let's say from adoption to transformation, because yes, you are a digital born company, no question about that. Your CEO is used to say we are a tech company into music, but when you are working with indie labels who are not native from tech, what is the process for them to let's say not only adopt but embrace the kind of tools you bring to them, and the different types of reaction you got from them?
Sure. You know, Julian was just talking about the value you bring to the customers, and to change the mindset, to really give them a data-driven mindset, you need to focus on the perceived value of the user. Is that data understandable? Is it accessible? Can they absorb that data? And one example I want to get is where we started off on the wrong path, and now we're trying to changing, and we think that we're getting it right this time. We previously integrated Shazam data into our Backstage, into our platform that's accessible via artists and labels as a regular store. And what we saw was that data was not adding a lot of value, just being integrated into them and showing how many Shazams the artists or the labels were getting on a daily basis. And then, we signed a partnership with TikTok last year, and we've started receiving TikTok data, and we started thinking about, okay, it's a different platform. The data, it's not a typical music streaming platform. So how do we use this data to really offer value for our artists and labels so that they start to use this and can adopt this, and it makes sense and it helps them advance their businesses or their careers. So really excited to announce that we're going to be rolling out a TikTok virality dashboard next week. It's a really innovative product that it allows us to detect early stage trending on TikTok, and then use a classification. So we've got classifications like emerging tracks, rising tracks, booming tracks, and so use this classification to convey that to artists and labels so that they can take the information and capitalize on that virality. And they can do this in different ways, either via social media, so they can start promoting the tracks that are kind of on the lower end of that trend through free marketing channels like social media. Then as the track starts going up the curve onto rising, they can look at adding in a little bit of paid marketing. And then as you hit, booming, really put some additional funds behind their marketing efforts. On our side, from Believe, we can start promoting these tracks to the DSP so that they can add it into editorial playlists. And so, it's a completely different way of looking at how you use the data, really engage the artist, make the data comprehensible. And we're going to be the first company of our kind to distribute data in this way for TikTok. And we think that it will add the value. And because we've changed the way that we're looking at data, we think that the adoption and the conversations we've had with our artists and labels already, the adoption will be quite high because it brings it to a level where they can understand. And again, coming back to the first time we spoke, take action on the data that they're getting.
Yeah, for sure. And super interesting, that new product coming in. And later today, there is a panel about smart music marketing, how to take advantage of data to operate marketing in a smart way, like from artist label perspective anyway. Coming to you, Christian, taking that sentence from Rob, making data comprehensible. can you tell us about the approach at Utopia, and maybe with you as a chief strategy officer working with the product team? How do you, let's say, see, and how do you work hard to make the loads of data you're processing comprehensible, and for which kind of use? And like, is it only about data visualization? How do you approach that? Like making a meaning out of data for your clients?
I mean, that's a great topic. Thank you for that. Like, the truth is that whenever we're talking about technology and data, there's a lot of things that innovation can unleash and a lot of things that product can build. But fact of the matter is that you never see adoption unless you're solving a true pain. So for us, understanding the customers and understanding what they're trying to achieve comes first. There's an old saying that if it's a vitamin, nobody will use it, but if it's a painkiller, then everybody will be subscribing to that. And based on the few sort of customer demographics that we're serving, clearly understanding the financial implications of consumption is at the root of the pain at the moment. And obviously it's related to the timing, but also this is the sort of occupation that we're trying to enhance. We're trying to maximize the value of the asset. So irrelevant to whether we're talking about the sort of creators or copyright holders individually or the funds, one of the most interesting visualizations that we've been able to do is to show the correlation between the actual payments and consumption, and the delta or the difference between what might be coming or what might be actually unclaimed. We believe, focusing on those concrete problems and doubling down means much more than just visualizing the data. Obviously, beautiful interfaces are sticky and enjoyable to use, but for us, understanding the customer need comes first.
Yeah, and accuracy, I guess, if this is just a basic that you need to deliver to make it a proper
100%.
use. Yeah. Marcus, you mentioned not the lag, but the different pace of adoption in the live sector about, let's say, data-driven approach of live music management. Anyway, you are still there and you're still pushing hard to make it work. So can you tell us about, let's say, what kind of set of data are currently used by your clients, and what you believe will be the future when hybrid concert will come? Like, can you elaborate a little bit more of just maybe the GigMeet dashboard project and tell the audience what it is about? Your new intelligence project. Yeah.
Sure. So first of all, I agree on what Rob said earlier. It is the whole life sector is not full of people who believe they are data analysts themselves. So it is a lot about making data accessible and readable or easy to understand, easy to use. And I believe there's a huge potential when it comes to use that. We believe there's a way of having only sold out shows or almost sold out shows in the future, and get away from and step away from these concerts where artists play in front of 5 people, because there's absolutely no need for this and no fun involved and no business success. So there's no point in doing that. Now, when it comes to getting there, we also believe it's very important to look at several sources. That is, again, right, like what has been said earlier, to not just look isolated on one single, let's say, data provider, one single DSP. Just look at Spotify for Artists, for example. It's very important to look at a mixture of data and to try to get as accurate as possible. So what we've been working on is identifying local data, to understand, okay, let's say you are a venue in London, that you have the chance to see what is actually streaming and fan development in London, how many active listeners does an artist have, and then of course not just look at one, like for example just the amount of listeners or listens, but also look at the amount of followers, also look at interaction and engagement on social media and so on, and correlate this with each other. So we look actually at data like Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, and we try to add more and more and more. And I see there's a huge potential for the creators, especially if we team up in the future and if we collaborate with copyright collecting societies, with distribution services and so on, in order to have as much data as possible available in one place, and give a guidance to the artist or give it to the manager and so on, in order to say where do you have the most potential, where can you sell out a show with the least marketing efforts, and so on and so forth. This is absolutely not present at the moment, and we see that is like also our users are just tapping slowly into this and starting to look into the data and make use of that. But we have to do have to work hard
more collectively, right?
Yeah, and also more collectively, correct? Yeah.
Or concentration. The future will tell us what will be the reality. It brings us to the end of the conversation, which is about, let's say, a collective effort. But before that, I think it is also tied with that last question about not collective intelligence, but how we combine piece of intelligence in one, let's say, single approach. There is a question from to Julien about is there any project at SACEM to open up part of your database and metadata to public? Bringing me also to an open question for everyone. So this is for you, Julien, about how do you see the future of, let's say, collective approach of insight and music intelligence? And this is a closing question for everyone who wants to jump in. First, open data approach at SACEM or not? And you can also bring your view about how to maybe combine efforts.
So the answer to open data is quite difficult. There's not a single answer. I think we have a lot of personal data when it comes to works and payments and so on. So of course we are acting in respect of GDPR, but also I'm a true believer of what open data could bring. And let's start with codes. If we could just share some ISWCs, ISRCs, DSP IDs and spread it, I think it would just do good to everyone. So that's something I have in mind, and we have in mind at SACEM, and we are working on that. And also we are trying to open our data not to the public, but first to our members, and with different approach. I totally agree with what was said by different speakers here, to listen to what people need and to provide them data with the right angle. So yes, we are working on opening more and more our data, always in respect with the regulation. And for what is the future, I also believe that bringing, let's say, all this data is bringing more transparency clearly to the music industry. So it's way easier to be transparent when it comes to online, and when your billing to the DSP comes from the analysis of data, and you know what you collect, what you distribute. It's very transparent for everyone. So I think the future will be to bring that transparency and that let's say technological processing to all the different channels we are collecting and distributing.
Yes. Technology for good, but for in a way. Who wants to double on that, because and to also with closing remarks on collective efforts, transparency. Ash, Christian, you want?
Yeah. I mean, I can jump in there. I just really welcome Julien's, sentiment and his thoughts. I love to hear that. That we can't all break down the barriers alone single-handedly. And everyone's very specialists and focusing on their things. So that's why it's about working together, and I really welcome that optimism. I also welcome the sentiment and share the sentiment towards sharing data. For us, we're not your typical rights management. We're not your typical collection management organization. We're a technology company, and we are tracking the actual recorded music that's being played in venues. When you can't, when you have dirty data, or when you can't, share the unique identifiers, because remember, the recording and the work, they're buddied together. It makes it very difficult, to kind of do the matching process. So I would welcome much more sharing and transparency around that. And, we're in it, as well, and we're there to help in any way we can. And, on the transparency thing, I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but it's true. The cliches are normally the true things. And we want to bring this data, to the PROs, collection management organizations, to their members, to try and inform, other decisions that they have to make. So yeah, that's what we want to bring to the table.
Thanks, Ash. Christian, I guess this is also why
absolutely.
Utopia is called Utopia, to
well,
to bring transparency,
dream, right?
to bring transparency for real to your music world.
100%. Like the problem we call is the data gap, and really it is a utopian dream to be able to have a way for everybody to have a shared truth on those matters. And we're working day in and day out hard to find ways to make sure that happens. I personally kind of believe that, like, if you have already 13 standards and then you take the brilliant minds into the room, you will get the 14th standard as a result. So we do need to have alternative ways to solving the problem. So for sure, I'm welcoming the sort of initiatives to open data, but we also need to recognize that the problem is very, very expensive for the creators and the whole industry. And we need some commercial efforts that are lining up towards a shared understanding of the data.
Great input. And I think also it goes also with Paul Pacifico keynote calling for a more collective approach of insight. Last word. I think we have people want to get me out of the room now. So Marcus, Rob, you have 3 seconds to say something inspiring for the audience. You go. Marcus, play yourself some guitar. I don't know what to do now. No, a bit of hope. A bit of hope for the live industry moving forward.
Well, I just think it's the right approach to work collaboratively on using the data in favor of the creators. And I think there's still huge potential in order to increase the revenue, not just from clearance, also from business opportunities that are out there. So I think it just should be another call to everybody to work on sharing approaches, sharing projects, and collaborative projects. I think the panel was really good and insightful for that.
Thanks, and Rob, you have the last word.
Yes, I think everyone's pretty much said everything already. But I think as we have new formats coming out, short form video, for example, and a video and audio, again having the ability to have the codes, as Julian referenced, I think is going to be becoming very important.
Great. Guys, this is just the beginning again. As you can see in the audience, this is an ongoing process. Tune in. We have a metadata panel led by Turo later today, talking exactly, I think, about what you brought to the table. And yeah, let's stay in touch, because we have a lot of things to do collectively to make that music ecosystem more transparent and a little bit more exciting too for creators. Yeah. Guys, thanks again, and take care. See you around.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.